Cheers. Should be good fun.
Hi everyone, welcome back to SmugMug Live. I am Alistair Jolly, your host. As always, welcome to the show. This show is brought to you, of course, by SmugMug and Flickr. I would ask you to do a couple of things for me. One, I would love you to subscribe and hit that bell notification. That way you'll be notified whenever we release an episode here on SmugMug Live. And I'm going to ask you to use the chat feature today on the live stream to post your questions for us, and we will ask those questions. We go live typically a couple of times a week, and this week, or today, I am joined by Neil Freeman from Nikon School. And then later this week, I have one of our ambassadors joining us. Renee Robin will be joining us on Thursday, which should be a great episode. So yeah, I'm just going to post a little comment for you in the chat window so that you know where it is. And yeah, any point today, if you have a question for us here on the live stream, just put it in the chat window. I am going to make an apology right now. If at any point I switch between saying Nikon and Nikon today, it's because I have my international accent on today. We're streaming all over the world, so for that reason I would love to hear where you are. Wherever you are in the world, put it in the chat window, give yourself a shout out and let us know where you're joining from, and I will try and not say Nikon or Nikon too many times today. But we are joined by my good friend Neil Freeman, who's from Nikon School. Hi Neil, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. And Nikon School, exactly.
Nikon School,
Pleasure
Nikon.
to be here.
Yeah. Neil is based in England, hence it's going to be Nikon School for him. For all of you who's joining us, maybe from the US, it's going to be Nikon for you folks. But we do have a bit of fun, Neil, right, with the naming convention all the time. Whenever we see each other at trade shows around the world, it can be a bit interesting trying to get the naming right. What is the name? You're the inside guy. What is the correct way to say it?
It depends on which region you're in. So we've got Nikon, Nikon. We just keep it to the local markets, to be honest. So we're Nikon School, Nikon in the UK.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what is Nikon School, and what's it all about.
So Nikon School is a training centre in London. It's a facility where we can teach anybody, any degree, beginners, intermediate, advanced photographers, any photography skills to get the best out of their Nikon cameras and lenses. With our landscape courses and our wildlife courses and our on-location courses, we actually welcome any camera brands as well. Myself and my colleague Rishi, we have a lot of experience across lots of other brands as well. So all brands are welcome if we're on a creative course. That's why we're talking about landscape photography today. So we can teach anybody the skills and techniques to take amazing landscape photography. So Nikon School is where you come to if you're passionate about photography and really want to get inspired and learn how to get the best out of your camera kit and your lenses. Come and talk to us or join one of our online courses, which we've been running since April. So if you go on to Nikon School UK, there's lots of online courses there, which we're changing week in, week out, and new courses being developed all the time.
Cool. And I've been very fortunate to be at the school a few times where we've done some joint events together and stuff, and it's a great place to learn. And I would say that today, although Neil's joining us from Nikon School, the things we're going to talk about, the settings, the techniques, they're appropriate for any brand or make of camera, but we'll let Neil specifically talk about Nikon today. It's funny, there's some great comments in the chat already. Roger Applegate Photography joins us from Afghanistan. Hi, Roger. Nice to see you. In fact, and then Roger follows up by saying, everyone knows it's Nikon, but you've written it, so we don't know what. We'll just pronounce it the way we want. Sorry, Roger, it doesn't help when you type it. So everyone can have it. We've got people from all over. So people joining from Scotland, which is where I am at the moment. And obviously we'll have an audience joining from the US and all over the world. So wherever you're joining us from today, you are more than welcome. Neil does present, and we kind of know each other from doing a few events together. But we do typically see each other at trade shows around the world. Where Neil presents along with some of their ambassadors, and we have quite a few mutual ambassadors as well that use your brand, and we work together with them. So I asked Neil to join me today so that he could give a little bit of his presentation that he does on wildlife photography. No, sorry, landscape photography.
I was going to say change my presentation.
just to panic you. So, and we thought we'd talk through that, and we thought we'd keep it quite informal. We'll chat back and forward about the images that you post. But I would love it if the viewers lead the questions. So if you have any questions at any point during the presentation, put them in the chat window, and I'll pester Neil with them as we go through this chat. Interesting fact: we're both using Nikon cameras to stream today, correct?
Yeah, I've got a Z7 here and 2470 f2.8.
Yeah, I'm streaming with a Z6, or as my colleagues would say, a Z6. So it's a Nikon Z6, and 24 to 70 2.8 lens as well. And it's been great to be able to stream with DSLRs as we can nowadays, because it shows up every wrinkle and crease in my face. So the first thing I want to talk about, what setting is there where we can do the soft focus and make ourselves look a little bit younger?
I think that's in grading, isn't it? I haven't found that secret yet. Yeah,
you haven't found that.
It's a difficult one to try and work out. I think earlier we were trying something on Zoom, which has got soften your appearance, and we were testing that, and it does take away some of the wrinkles, but the rest of you just goes up, the rest of the skin tones off. So I just put up with it. It's one of those things now.
We stream in high def, and we're proud of the hard work we've put in to get these wrinkles, right?
Experience, yeah.
Well, something like that. Hard work. Let's put it that way. So we're going to go to the top of the hour, hopefully. We've no set schedule. We'll just chat away. But as I say, please feed your questions. But Neil, shall we get started, and we'll move over to your presentation if you want to share your screen?
Yeah, just share the screen here.
I do love it when people post where they come from, so thank you everyone for posting those comments. That's great.
Right, we've got my screen there.
Let's see. Yes, we have. So I'll keep you and myself down in the lower third and the bottom left corner. If it's hiding anything particularly important, I'll close that picture in picture. But yeah, thanks for doing this, Neil. I appreciate it. But I'll hand over to you.
Pleasure to be here. Good evening, everybody. Well, it's evening where I'm from. Good morning if it's morning from wherever you are. Pleasure to be here on SmugMug Live. Just talking through some of my landscape photography. Just a quick background for me. I've been shooting photography since when I was very, very little. Film cameras, slide cameras, Fuji Velvia. Can't beat that stuff, really. That's where I really got into my landscape photography. And then evolved through to now been working with Nikon at Nikon School for a number of years. So passionate landscape photographer. I teach all sorts of genres of photography, be it portraiture, wildlife, landscape, sports at Nikon School. But my big passion is landscape photography. I just want to talk you through today and take your questions. And please keep the questions coming in. As I said, the techniques I'm going to talk about are relevant to any type of landscape photography. I shoot with Z7, so I've gone mirrorless now. Prior to that, I was shooting with an 850, 800 series throughout my career. Started with D3s on my Nikon career when I was shooting as a working photographer before I joined Nikon. So keep the questions coming in. We'll try and answer as many as we can about landscape photography. So these are all over the UK, these pictures, and some of them are from Iceland. I've not been managed to get out to the States. I've got big to-do lists, Yellowstone, Yosemite, and those sort of things, and some of the monument valleys and places like that, Canada and Rockies and all sorts of places I want to get out to, but they're all on the to-do list. So mainly been talking about UK and European locations today. If you want to follow us at Nikon School, see what we're up to, it's at Nikon School on Instagram. I'm at Nikon Neil UK. If you want to DM me with questions about your Nikon gear and things like that, more than happy to answer any questions if I can. So follow along there if you want, and if you want to check out Nikon training, so it's nikonschool.uk. We've got lots of online training courses on there as well. Okay, let's start with this first image here. This is one of my favourite national parks in the UK. This is Snowdonia National Park. This is in Wales, in North Wales. This particular place is called Llyn Ogwen, and it's a place that you can revisit time and time and time again, and you're going to get different pictures. Time of year, time of day, the weather changes so rapidly through here. Um, One of the things I'm going to talk about my landscape photography, when I shoot, when I visualize my pictures, because I don't sort of get my camera gear out the bag until I visualize what I want to shoot. Actually, most times if we're on a workshop or if I'm shooting personally, I won't normally leave until I've sort of visualized or already planned my shot. So one of those things is actually knowing about your visualization of your image is how you're going to finish it. So your raw files are meant to be finished. It's a bit like when I used to shoot my slides and my negatives. I didn't hand you my slide or my negative. I went into my dark room, I closed the door, the light came on, magic happened. And then I came out and I gave you a print. And that was my finished negative or my finished slide. These days, your raw files are meant to do that. So when I finish in my digital darkroom now, I finish to the look I want as a photographer. And I don't set out to shoot reality at all. I can see reality. My shots and the way I finish as a photographer, finish my images, is to make the colors a bit poppier, give it a bit more contrast, give it a bit of a kick. But I don't want to get it into that HDR realm necessarily. But that's my look as a photographer. And I appreciate if some people might not like it, some people might like it, but it makes me happy. And this is what I say to all photographers: shoot for yourself, make yourself happy. As long as you're getting sharp images, as long as you've got your depth of field correct, and you're producing images that make you happy, that's all you need to do. Don't get too caught up in sort of what other people think of your images and that sort of thing. So find your style and get your own style. So I appreciate if people don't like the color tones here, but I've not gone out to shoot reality. That's not what I intend to do whenever I go out and shoot. So I'm intending to sort of give everything a little bit of a kick. What did reality look like? It looked like this, but just a little less punchy. It was a bit flat, but that's fine. I saw it. It was impressive, but I try and make my pictures a bit more punchy when I'm shooting. So have that concept about where you're going, what you're trying to achieve before you even start shooting with your camera. Because shooting a picture and how you put the picture together, your composition, and then how you finish that, that's all of a journey. And if you don't have an end point for your journey, you're not going to get there when you start taking the pictures. So always try and develop your own style and look, so you can know where you go when you're finishing your pictures.
Cool. I got a
So
question. I got a question for you. Sorry,
yeah,
in the details up there, you've got a medium gradient on a medium grad on the lens. I assume is that the top of the image that you've held back
yeah,
a
it
little bit?
is. So I've got the grads coming in from the top of the image. So a lot of I get a lot of questions about why do you use 1.2s and 0.9s. They're my go-to grads. I have 3 grads in my bag. I have a zero point 0.6, a 0.9, and a 1.2. I like dark, stormy, deep contrast skies. That's my style. So I use a 0.9 and a 1.2. That's just my go-to. And I find a medium, when I first started back on film day shooting Fuji Velvia, I was shooting sort of soft grads and hard grads, and they need a lot more, you need to be a lot more smarter about where you're placing those, and they're not as easy to use as medium grads. And I think medium grads just make your life really, really easy these days. And there still is a place for physical grads as well. We get a lot of questions about, oh, I can do that in software. Yes, the dynamic range on the sensors, certainly on things like the Z7 and the sort of D850, incredible dynamic range, and we can pull out 3-4 stops shadow detail and bring back 2-3 stops highlight detail if we want. But on a scene like this, especially if you've got the sun on it, the dynamic range is still immense, so you still do need a physical grad at the moment. They've not been replaced. So I often use a physical grad at point of capture, plus then a software grad if I want to tweak the image further.
Yeah, there's definitely still things that are difficult to do in software when it comes to grads and polarization, especially. But I carry grads all the time. I mean, when I'm out, I still love them. Physical grads. Another question for you: with the Z series of the cameras, what is without using the converter for older lenses? What's the current widest lens for the Z series mirrorless?
So we've got this one here. We've got is the 1430, which is the f4s. On the roadmap, there is a 1424 f2.8 s, which has been announced as well. So currently, the widest is 14mm at this stage.
Yeah.
So that is, to be honest, wide enough for the vast majority, I think, of that photographers need. I've seen recently there's some really wide lenses been released, which would be great to play with, but I'm not sure how practical they are to shoot in the real world.
Yeah.
Here, I'm right on the edge of the scene. If I go wider than this on this shot, I have people standing in it on the right-hand side, and I'll then have a whole load of unwanted rubbish from the boatyard which we're shooting from. So yeah, I find 14mm is a good practical real world focal length.
Yeah, and it's full frame 14mm, so it's pretty wide.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Cool.
it is.
Thanks
so
for that.
yeah, really good lens, and that's one of the things with the Z series as well. When I transitioned from DSLR from my D850, which was an amazing camera, and I was shooting the 1424 f2.8, that was really, I thought, pinnacle of sharpness. And then when I transitioned into mirrorless, what really hit me was with the bigger bayonet mount here, and the way we can now redesign the optics because we've got that large bayonet mount, the sharpness of this S series glass, the glass, the lenses, the 1430, the f4s and things like this. This lens is stunningly sharp. It's sharper than what I consider to be the pinnacle of my f-mount lenses on my D850, the 1424 f2.8. This S series glass for the Z series cameras is just incredibly sharp, and my understanding of what a sharp picture is has now evolved again, as it has done all throughout my career.
Yeah, interesting, cool.
So one of the things I like to do in my style is texture. So that's why my go-to grad is generally go-to ND is a 3-stop. So I like this texture in the water. I also have a concept of low and close. It is very rare for you to find me with my tripod higher than knee level. Sometimes you'll catch me with it at waist level. It is very rare to find me with my tripod at chest level. So normally it's below knee, so it's low, and it is close, especially if we're at 14mm. What I like is, so we've got the low angle there and close, meaning that if I reach over my camera, I can touch the foreground. Okay, I can touch these rocks in the foreground. They enable me, that's low and close, and that will get you that sort of immersive feel into your pictures, especially if you're shooting 14, 18, 20, 24mm. Try, if you've not tried it, that low close approach. And also tilt your camera down by about 5 degrees and you'll get this sort of sweep into your image. So you can really get that pull through the image, foreground to background. If we're shooting on modern sensors these days and modern lenses, f8 to f11, certainly when you get onto 45 megapixel cameras, 36 megapixel cameras, you really need to be aware of how sharp your lenses are and running into potentially diffraction. So you don't want to go above, on modern cameras, do not go above f16, because even though your depth of field will continue to increase, because the aperture diaphragm is getting so small now, the light isn't recorded correctly as it comes into the sensor, it scatters. So even though your depth of field increases, your image will actually get softer if you shoot beyond f16 on most sort of modern high megapixel cameras with good lenses.
It's really interesting.
It's very, very rare.
You went to a topic.
Beyond f11.
Yeah, you went to a topic there I was going to ask later on, specifically about the new lenses in the Z series, but any modern lens. So you kind of answered that already. So anything beyond f16 is kind of diminishing returns, right?
Yeah, I again, it is sort of sensor lens dependent. There's some, you'll rarely find me above f11. There is about one time when I potentially might think about doing that. So if I've got a horizon level sunset, and I want to create starburst without using a starburst filter, I might push it to f18, f22. But, and here's a big but, I'm sacrificing the sharpness of the whole image for doing that. Because I've got diffraction kicking in. So it's a bit of a compromise there. This is sort of real world photography. I know with some of, we look at MTF charts and all this great stuff about how sharp lenses are and all this sort of thing and how they perform in the labs. But what I want to talk about today is sort of real world
Yeah.
photography and how things perform in the real world.
And and you're saying the larger the sensor size. So if you've got a 20 megapixel camera and a 40 megapixel camera, as you go higher in the megapixels, that sharpness or lack of sharpness is more noticeable, right?
It will be, yeah. Yeah.
And does it go the other way, right? Where does it go down to? When does it start falling off at the wider apertures?
Oh, it doesn't really have that much of effect. That comes down to the glass. So some of our f2.8 are really sharp down at 2.8 and 1.8. So it doesn't really have the same sort of effect down there. So it's not really something to worry about at that end. It's just going above the bigger numbers. So the f16s of the world. Back in the day on slide and film was not as sort of, we didn't notice the diffraction. It still happened. We just didn't notice it. Digital sensors are a lot more unforgiving. They show up all our flaws in camera technique and sort of camera settings if we don't get it right.
Yeah, as we mentioned earlier, the fact it shows up all the wrinkles, it also shows up all the failures in focus and that type of stuff as well.
It does, definitely. It does. You have to be very, very careful.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, we had the wonderful Gavin Hardcastle from Photo Tripper on the show, a good friend of the company, and he does a lot of amazing landscape, but he starts getting into the focus stacking work,
Yep.
where if you need that extra sharpness, rather than push the lens, start focus stacking and that type of stuff. Do you do much in that realm?
That's a great way of doing it. I don't do a lot of focus stacking because most of my images have moving water in them. I seem to be fascinated by moving water, whether it's a waterfall or whether it's a coastline, or here I've got the best of both worlds. This is heaven for me. I've got a waterfall going into the sea, and it just like doesn't get better for me. I can't really focus stack something that's got movement in it because I run the risk of ghosting it regardless of how quickly I shoot it. So I don't tend to focus stack, but if you've got static subjects, it's a great way of really increasing that depth of field if you wanted to do that. If you're going to put the time in afterwards to sort of stack all the images together in software and things like that. I know a lot of that process is automated. The Z series cameras and the D850 as well has a focus shift shooting mode, which if you set it up will automatically increment the camera's autofocus forward. So you set a step width of say 4, and then it will f11, for example, and it will increment the camera through until it hits infinity focus. So it will automatically do that process for you.
Wow, I
You
was
then
not
just have to
was not
stack
aware
it
of
in.
that.
Yeah,
That's
so it's
cool.
in the photo shooting menu. So the camera setting menu on our cameras, focus shift shooting.
Say
So
that
yeah,
say that after a few beers. Focus shift shooting.
No, you can't. Yeah, you really, really can't.
So that's kind of like bracketing for focus then, in a
It
way.
is.
Yeah.
That is exactly. It's a great way of describing it. But you just got to watch movement. I have a lot of movement in my pictures, so I can't really focus stack. This previous shot here. This is actually. Let's talk about this. This is. We do a tour of Antrim, so the Northern Ireland. So Game of Thrones photographer Helen Sloan was sort of. She's based in Antrim, and a lot of Game of Thrones was shot there. All of the behind the scenes stuff you saw, all the still images from Game of Thrones were shot on Nikon cameras. So we go around a lot of the Game of Thrones locations and because they're all stunning landscapes.
Yep.
We run a landscape photography tour there. It's a stunning part of the world. This place is called Dunsevik Castle, which is just terrific. You get the storm skies coming in, and it's just an amazing location here.
Yeah. But so the fact that you have that moving water element, if you were to focus stack, the difficulty becomes the point where you have to blend those two images with the
Exactly.
movement. It's doable,
Yeah.
but it's a lot of work, right?
They're going to ghost, yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to try and work out which frame doesn't ghost and then paint it back out, and which one does ghost. It can be a lot of work.
Yeah, I'm
So
going
here
to
we've
try.
got,
Sorry, before you move on, Neil.
yeah,
I'm going to try and get an episode of SmugMug Live where we maybe go in deep into focus stacking. It's come up a few times. We had Michael Sheenblum, who's a wonderful landscape time lapse photographer, but also night sky photographer, so Milky Way, that type of stuff. And he does a lot of focus stacking, as I said. Gavin Hardcastle as well. So if viewers are interested in that, I'll certainly see if I can get someone to come along and do a kind of technical look at focus stacking. So stay tuned. I'll see if I can set that up, and we'll have a look at that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's a really, really good technique, especially for astro, deep sky, certainly nebula photography, deep sky with equatorial trackers. That's pretty much the only way you can really do it. And you're stacking a lot of images in that sort of sense. So yeah, it's a really, really good technique if you've not got a lot of movement in it. This here, has anybody been to Iceland? If you haven't, as a landscape photographer, you should go. It is stunning. I prefer it in the winter. I've not been in the summer. I think it gets a bit too busy. But this is Vik on the most southern point of Iceland. The colour pastel, or sort of the colour palette you get to play with in Iceland is unlike anything I've seen in the UK. It's completely different. The sunrises, sunsets, they last for hours. Rather than in the UK here, we normally get to like 20 minutes sometimes part of the year, and then it's just gone. You've got a lot longer to play with this beautiful type of light, and the clouds just take on all these various different shades of pastel blues, pinks, and everything. It's just a stunning scene to see. You've also then got the storm clouds and the snowstorm clouds, and you can get some really intense storms coming across, which again makes for great photography. The way I focus my images, we're talking about focus stacking there. I use the focus peaking tool on the camera. So that I've evolved from using my viewfinder to then using live view, and then using the magnify, the plus button, magnify in on my live view screen, then autofocus or manual focus to get the image sharp. I now use the live view screen on my Z7 or the LCD monitor and use focus peaking, which outlines the areas that are sharp in a contrasting color. And then I know I've got my depth of field front to back. One of the other great features we've got on the cameras is something called a split screen view, which is available on the 800, 810, 850, and sort of Z7, Z6. And what that does, it will split the screen in half, so you can see 100% magnification and and if you move it around, so you can see your foreground and background at the same time, and then just move your focus peaking to get it sharp, which makes focusing really, really easy these days.
Does it? I haven't used a lot of focus peaking on the Z series. Does it automatically choose the color so that the color stands out on the, or can you set the color? Or?
You can set the color. Right. You've got 4 colors. You've got red, blue, yellow, and white. We generally recommend blue or red because they stand out against most backgrounds. But yeah, you get to choose that depending on what you're actually shooting. So you've got 4 color choices for that, and then you've got 3 levels of sensitivity depending on the scene in front of you.
It's interesting. I know a few photographers that have some color definition issues. You know, a lot of males are prone to having green-brown deficiencies, and I know some folk that have said when it's red, they really struggle if red is over green or red is over brown. So the fact you can change it to blue and stuff is really, really cool.
Yeah, we try and make it as useful as possible, and it does. I do tend to find myself, depending on the scene in front of me, if I'd set it blue here, I would have actually changed it to red because it would show up more.
Yeah.
When you're actually out in the field shooting. So yeah, that's a really, really good point. And again on here, 1 second, and this is why I put this one in, just show that a change of grad. So filters, drop-in filters, I use 100mm filter systems. I use Nisi filters. I've used them for the last 3 or 4 years. Prior to that, I was using Lee filters, but I'm a big fan of drop-in filters. They give me a lot of control. Normally, I've got an ND filter and then a grad filter as well, and that fits. And that's one of the beauties of that 1430. It's a 14mm lens, but takes a 100mm filter system rather than having to take a 150mm filter system.
If you go too
say the 1424 f2.8 had to take. So there's a lot less weight in my bag. So that was revolutionary about that lens when it came out. 14mm plus you can get 100mm filters, and it doesn't vignette.
Yeah, a lot less weight, but also does a lot less damage on your bank balance having to shoot at the 100mm.
Lot more lighter to carry as well.
Absolutely.
Carry it around.
Sorry, can I go back to a question that's relevant to something you just mentioned? Roger's actually asked a few questions, so let me go back to his first one, and he apologised because he said Noel instead of Neil, but he did send an apology. Neil has been called worse, do not worry, on a regular basis. His question is, could Neil talk about how best to use a 70-200 within landscapes? I only
Yes,
because
I will.
I only asked because I have one on the way. He says, so if at some point, I don't know if you have any that you've taken with
I
that
have a
one.
slide prepared just for that.
Well, we'll get to that one then. So, more appropriate to what you just spoke about, Roger then asks, where is the split screen setting located in the menu of the D850?
Um,
I guess the one where you
uh,
said you can see the full view and the...
yeah.
It's in
So
the
split
menus.
screen view on a D850. Can I go and grab one out of my bag and about when we get towards the end, and I'll
Yeah.
show you off the top of my head. I can't remember. I think it's D850 split screen view. It's not in the photo shooting menu. Let me go and grab one out of my
We'll
bag.
get one near the
I'm
end.
here, and I'll answer that in a second.
Yeah, we'll do a practical session for you, Roger, near the end. For that one, you put them on the spot, so that's always good. I like that when a guest gets put on the spot. Keep the hard questions coming, folks. We
Keep the
like
hard
it.
questions coming because we can answer all of them. I just need the cameras in front of me to find it through.
Right, I'll go back to this image.
Reason I've got that one up is this one here. Same scene, different filter. So literally, if we go from a 3-stop ND to a 10-stop ND, we change the scene entirely, and we get a lot more drift through the clouds, and our sort of painterly landscape here suddenly becomes this blur of streaks of color, and then we've got the sea, and we've just sort of got rid of it, and we've got this sort of mistiness. Now, it's entirely up to you which one of these you like. I think they're both valid. I personally prefer these sort of ones with sort of painterly skies and sort of bit of texture in the water. But there's nothing wrong with this. When I first got my first ever filter, this is all I shot, and I thought it was terrific. And I still do think it's terrific in the right place. But the sort of filters you arm yourself with determine the sort of types of pictures you can actually shoot.
That's more my bag, that second one. I do like that one.
But long exposures,
Long
yeah.
exposure, I do like it. It's really nice.
So,
The texture in this sand at the forefront of that, the foreground, is awesome.
I was actually going to say I've just started using Capture One for Nikon since it came out. I used to use Lightroom before that, and the new Capture One for Nikon, if you've got that software, have a look at it, because I've re-edited a few of my pictures, and this is one of them. This is a Capture One output. The Lightroom image version of this has haloing around the rock stacks, and it has got nowhere near that amount of detail in the sand. And I don't know what Capture One's done to it. The other thing I found is Capture One is showing me where I've got dust spots, which I never saw on the Lightroom version of this, just looking at this. So I've got to get a bit better at cleaning my sensor and cleaning them up afterwards as well. But yeah, the Capture One
really
software
good
for Nikon has amazing level of detail in it.
Funny you should mention that. You maybe want to join next week, next Tuesday. We actually have Dave Grover joining us from Capture One, who's going to give us
cool.
a little tutorial on those of us that love the Capture One software. So that is this time next week. Yeah.
Fantastic. I will tune into that. Dave's already done an online course for us, and we've got on the 15th, we've got another course, Nikon School Online, with Dave as well. So we've got a 2-hour online course on Capture One for Nikon as well.
Cool.
So
If
that'll be a really
anybody,
good course.
yeah,
Dave's
if
a good guy.
anybody knows anything about Capture One, it's Dave. So bring all your hard questions for Dave as well.
Yeah, really hard ones as well. I've not found one he can't answer yet. This, again, North Wales, Snowdonia National Park. One of the things I always find about getting to locations is trying to get there about an hour before sunrise, sunset, whatever's going to happen, because it gives you a chance to scout the location, look at where your pictures are going to be taken. Or in this case, the sunrise didn't happen, so we went to a new location, and I was using the 10-stop ND here. There was a very, very gentle breeze blowing down the Lynn here. And that was just using the 10-stop ND to give it that 56-second exposure, which gives me that sort of mirror flat finish. This is the Snowdonia mountain range. You can see up to the left here. My mouse haven't got. You can actually see here on the image. If you look, we've got this at Nikon School in London, and it's about, I don't know, 4 meters by 3 meters on the wall. This was above the stand at a photography show last year. And you can actually see the train there on the hill. That's how much definition you can get out of this as well. So these images can be printed huge. You can actually really see the train on the life-size print of this.
Awesome.
This, I think, of all the places I've photographed in the world so far, and there's a lot of places that I haven't photographed yet, so I'm quite up for sort of reworking my favorite place to shoot. This is Vestrahorn in the very southeast of Iceland, and it is a stunning location. And this one is comes back to visualizing your picture, what I was talking about earlier about sort of having an idea. So I had an idea. Sunrise is coming up behind me, and I had an idea that the clouds were going to go on fire and it was going to be brilliant. That didn't happen. The sun came up and went into a cloud bank. So we went on the bottom of the left-hand side over there. There's a little cafe, and we went and sat in there. And every 5 minutes, we popping our heads out, and then we actually saw that the clouds were starting to take on some of the sun's color, and it was sort of effectively lighting the mountain range as well, and the clouds behind the mountain range. So we all dashed back in the car, went back down to where we were shooting, and I'm fascinated by reflections. So when I try and compose images, I'm looking for symmetry, reflections, leading lines, or trying to put something on the rule of thirds. I know they're all sort of, you can mix and match some of those, and some of those are a bit traditional, but I find they work really well for landscapes. So if you're stuck trying to compose an image, try leading lines, rule of thirds, reflections, or symmetry. Leading lines and rule of thirds, you can pretty much get into any type of image. But here, so this was a revisit of just sort of watch the light change. And the guy that taught me photography way back when I was shooting Fuji Velvia, taught me landscape photography, had a saying, and his saying was, sometimes your best shot is behind you. So rather than behind us, we've got this non-thing of sunrise going on, you turn round and you've got this going on. So in this case, my best shot was behind me. So it's always worth having a look around your scene before you get your camera gear out. This is actually, this is not a lake or anything. This is like 2 centimeters of water sitting on black sand. So it's not very deep at all. And if you walked around far enough, you could find the perfect reflection. When I first started shooting, I had bitty reflections because I was way off to the left. But if you survey your area far enough, you can actually, you'll find the shot you want most of the time.
Cool.
And that's what it looked like the following day. Clouds have gone, and you can see that the black sand has actually punched through the cracks in the ice. So this is surface ice, and it's frozen over overnight, and then the black sand here, the volcanic sand, has pushed through and created these amazing leading lines. So yeah, this location is never the same. And I've been with the photographer I co-lead with out here. He's been out here 50 odd times. He said he'd never seen something like this.
I've never seen a shot like that. I've never seen black leading lines with the sand. It's awesome.
Yeah, the shot across to the side, I don't actually have it in the presentation. It looks like a spider's web. If you started shooting to the right, it had all cracked up, and it just looks like a spider's web. And it was again, surreal experience to shoot. We went back the next day, and this had all gone, and you wouldn't have noticed it. And actually, we didn't shoot anything because it was about a 50-mile-an-hour wind. You couldn't stand up because it was blowing volcanic sand straight at you, which was not ideal. I call these wave fireworks. So I'm always looking to try. I could do high shutter speed waves, handheld. I could do slow shutter speed waves. The reason I went to wave fireworks was we were out, this is Antrim, and we were shooting, and the sun came out, and then all the clouds disappeared. So I'm out shooting, and I've got a beautiful blue sky, which I didn't want. I've got the sun, which was far too intense in the frame, hitting a load of land that I wanted to shoot, which was just in the wrong light. So I went looking for my next picture, and I was watching how the sea was breaking against the cliff face here. And I was thinking, well, what happens if I put my 3-stop on here? This 0.6 to 1 second to 0.6 to an eighth, something like that. Depends on how fast the water's moving. But you can create some really good effects with a 3-stop ND. I love the texture that a 3-stop ND filter creates. So I call this firework waves.
That's cool. I like that one.
This is Snowdonia, which is what it generally looks like most of the time. Our hotel is in the middle of that valley down there. Long story on this, my colleague who might be watching this tonight, we'd gone to go up and photograph Snowdonia. And somebody brought his lens, his batteries, his memory card, his rucksacks and everything like that. but he had left his camera body in the hotel room. So this is the drive back to the hotel room. And as this storm came through, I was like, I'm getting out to go and shoot this. So I went out to go and shoot this because it was just intense. Yes, I'm using a 1.2 grad to give it sort of that end of day sky and make it sort of a lot more intense than it was, but it was a super intense storm and layers here. Now this starts to get on to starting to reference the question that was asked earlier about starting to use longer lenses. You see, I'm starting to creep up to 43 mil here.
Yep.
I still wanted to get this valley's quite wide. I have another shot where I shot in my longer lens, where I've just shot the right-hand side here at 200 mil, and using the perspective compression, this is where we use longer lens stuff to compress the perspective so all the mountain ranges feel like they're right on top of each other. And that's a great technique if you've got something like this. So I shot this one with my 24-70, and then I shot the right-hand side of this frame with a 70 to 200 and compressed everything down. So it looks like the mountains are right on each other or sitting on top of each other with the light coming through and the sort of clouds drifting across. But yeah, the long lenses have a great place for landscape photography.
Yeah. Afterwards, you'll need to share the name of the person that forgot their camera, because I've forgotten a lot of things on trips. I've forgotten extra batteries. I've forgotten memory cards. I've forgotten tripods and tripod mounting plates. I've never forgotten my camera body. That's a good one.
Yeah, he had everything apart from camera body. But yeah, we won't mention his name. But he worked with me at Nikon School. Yeah. This is a good example. I remember the shot I opened with, this one here.
Yep.
That is behind me, an upper slight set of paths. Again, one of those things, it's a different day to that opening shot. But one day we were shooting Llyn and it was just, you could see nothing was going to happen. And turn around, like, wouldn't it be great if the sun clipped the snowy mountaintop and there was a cloud bank? When I first started visualizing this, there wasn't clouds here. Yeah. So a bit of patience always helps. And then we're in a national park, and the cloud banks here in the UK, what it's doing in one valley, it's not going to do that in a different valley. And the weather systems change really, really rapidly. And I was really fortunate to get this backlight coming. So the sun's coming up behind me now, and I was just looking at it backlighting or hitting the light hitting the clouds here to give me this terrific sort of light on the landscape. 20 minutes later, this had all gone. It looked like a flat grey day that we normally get over here. You wouldn't have known how good of a morning it was. It was quite funny. This was the last day of the workshop. And all of the delegates had said, a bit too tired, been a long week, we've done sunset, sunrise, we'll skip this one. This was the best sunrise of the week. We went back to the hotel, and then we had breakfast, and then it poured of rain for the rest of the day. So the only frames that were shot this day were the sort of hour or so myself and my colleague went out because none of the delegates wanted to come out with it. So top tip, if you're going on a photography workshop and the tutors are going out, go with them, regardless of what time of hour it is. If they think there's something to shoot, go with them. Because, yeah, all of our delegates missed probably some of the best photography from that week because they wanted an extra hour in bed, which was...
Yeah. Landscape photography is so frustrating. I mean, it is one of the most frustrating genres because, you know, you're not in control of much of the elements of the photography, and you have to have a lot of patience. You have to learn a lot of patience, and then you have to work really fast. When the moment comes, you really need to know your gear so that you're not messing about with it when the fleeting light comes, because it's all about the light, you know.
Yeah, it very much so. Agree completely, Alistair. It's I've been to more failed sunrises and failed sunsets than I have good ones. But if I'm not there for the failed ones, I've got no chance of getting the good ones anyway. Exactly. And that's why if on this one, I always try and have a foreground. Mm-hmm. So even if that didn't work, I've got it'll be a flat light mountainscape with an interesting foreground in it. The fact that I got the good light just makes the image even better. So that's why I always try and have layers in my photos as well, just to give me that sort of escape clause to the image, if you like, that, okay, if the light doesn't happen, I've still got something that could be good.
Yeah, I once heard a photographer, an amazing photographer, Nobby, told, someone said to him, "Oh, you're so lucky with the weather. Every time you go out, you're so lucky." And he said, "It's funny. The more often I go out and fail, the luckier I seem to get." So get out there and
That is
try
so
it.
true.
Yeah,
That is a great saying. A great saying.
it's been kind of difficult
This
to
is,
get out there recently, obviously with the
yes, it is.
pandemic. But as things begin to look a little bit more promising and stuff, hopefully we can start using some of these techniques and stuff in the near future.
So focusing here, I focused on that rock in the center of the river there. And again, focusing somewhere about a third of the way into your picture is going to get you near, if you're not using focus peaking, is going to get you near the hyperfocal distance if you're going to shoot f8 or f11, and that will give you front to back sharpness. The foreground of this image is what I call a bubble pool. So after you get moving water, and you watch little bubbles appear as the water's been churned up, and that's what's giving that sort of circular pattern in the very close foreground here. They're just the bubbles rotating around. So I try and watch how they're moving around and then set my camera up accordingly. 4 seconds here to give me those circles in the bubbles. Now the 4 seconds here will give me the circles in the foreground, but the water's coming over the waterfall too fast to really get any definition in it. But that's just a compromise I have to make at that time. Sometimes with waterfalls, the water's just too fast to get any texture in it, regardless of what you do.
Yeah, that focus third of the way in thing, that's something we've been talking about ever since lenses were invented, and that's still true to this day, just the way they're
Yeah,
built, right?
it will still get you there. You'll find that if you actually use the apps and things like that, it's pretty close to where the hyperfocal point is, if you want to be super technical about it. But it is close enough to get, as I said, front to back sharpness. And again, if you're going to use focus peaking these days, that just highlights everything in the contrasting color, and you can see what's sharp anyway.
Yeah, cool. Good to know that's still relevant. Do most of the lenses nowadays still have hyperfocal marks on the lenses, or is that
No,
no?
most of those have gone.
Yeah,
So yeah, lens sort of lens windows. So where you've got the distance gauges, most of those are being phased out.
yeah,
If you look at the 24-70-2.8 that you've got there, that has a digital version on
yeah.
it on the LCD panel. So we've got digital versions on that. On the back of the camera, if you're on live view, you have a distance gauge on the live view monitor for when you're focusing. So that comes up on the back of the LCD on the Z series. So
Been
that helps you.
superseded. It doesn't need it on the lens if you've got these additional tools between
No,
focus peaking and measurements on the LED, LCD screens and stuff. So I guess it's superseded. But I did always like a lens that had it on it.
yeah, again, it's some of those. When I started shooting, I've actually forgotten a lot of what I learned back then because technology's made it irrelevant. Things like metering. I used to really obsess about different metering modes. Was my camera in the right metering modes and things like that? But the way the technology's moved forward, certainly shooting in matrix metering these days, we rarely take our cameras out of it. It's that sophisticated. So I find sort of embrace the technology that comes forward because the less thinking I have to do about the complex stuff, I can look at light and composition now a lot more. And light and composition is what's actually going to separate your picture from somebody else's rather than your in-depth, detailed knowledge of the camera.
Indeed.
If there are any Welsh people watching, apologies, I cannot pronounce the name of this place.
Go
It
for it.
really is complicated, but it is stunning. It's on Anglesey, amazing lighthouse to go and photograph. And this is a true to point why you actually need a physical grad. There is no way of taking this picture without a physical grad in front of the lens because the sun is just going to blow it completely. You're not going to get that detail in the shot.
Just move your
Again, one of the other
cursor out the way because it looks like a dust spot on the sun there. So there you go.
There you go. I can't actually see my cursor on
Yeah.
this, so I don't have no idea where it was. There we go.
Right on the sun.
Right on the sun, dust spot. Okay. 58 seconds. The reason I've gone 58 seconds here is this lighthouse has a lot of visitors to it and a lot of walkers. And I'm a walker hiker myself. And yes, I have bright jackets like most hikers do. The reason if you go for a longer exposure, it means you've got less Photoshop work to do because unless the people that are walking up and down those paths stand still, they're actually going to be outside of your picture. So that's, again, one of the reasons why I wanted the longer exposure on this. So it can save you some Photoshop work.
Yep. Lovely mood to that one.
Sea caves off Yorkshire, off the Yorkshire coastline. Now, we were talking about sort of focus stacking. We don't need to do anything here. And this is not bracketed either. This is one shot. This is how good the dynamic range is. This cave, this sea cave is pitch black. If you're going to go exploring sea caves, be very careful with the tide times. It's an outgoing tide, but occasionally the surge of water that came in was a bit disconcerting. But I knew where my escape routes were, and I knew it was still an outgoing tide. Anyway, but this dynamic range here is just a single shot. Yes, I've got a grad filter pushed right the way down, medium grad, to give me a bit of definition in the cloud there. And then I just open the shadow slider in my post-processing software to bring out that texture. And I'm lighting the foreground here with my head torch. So we're trying to sort of get as much light in as it could. I didn't want to go super long exposure here because I'd lose the texture in the water. But yeah, it's I love this. One of the other things we're doing here, I'm just tweaked. I normally shoot on auto white balance because these days that's really good. And then because I'm shooting raw, I will actually then tweak my white balance slightly in post processing. So I've moved it cooler just to give that sort of feel to the cave.
How wet did you get?
Wave motion here. Sorry, Alistair.
I was saying, go back to that last one. I'm curious, how wet did you get in there?
Right, the best photography purchase I've made in the last few years are wellies. 17-inch wellies. They come up just below my knees. They're neoprene wellies as well, made by a brand called Kamek. They are brilliant. They're hiking wellies. Really great. And yeah, I didn't get too wet, but yeah, you had to be careful with that. You'll normally find me in my wellies standing in rivers and streams. That's not as deep as it looks. I wouldn't have gone if... Yeah, I won't do anything silly when I'm in locations like this, and if that was too deep, I wouldn't have even gone in there. But yeah, it's not as dangerous as it looks.
Yeah, I always have a good conversation with my American colleagues about wellies. It's not a terminology that's used much around the world. So rubber boots.
Rubber boots. There we go. Yeah, Kamek is a Canadian brand. They make I think hunting gear as well.
I have the neoprene ones, the mud boots. I can't remember the.
Yeah, I've got cool. Some of those that I use in Iceland as well. Yeah, they're
in Scotland, they're just day wear though. That's what you wear every day. It's fashion wear in Scotland.
I was going to say I'm up here in Yorkshire, and yeah, the weather recently has been what I call distinctly Scottish. Yeah. This beautiful. Is Northumberland coastline. So this is the east coast, just below the Scottish borders. This is called the Black Hole, a place called Craster. And again, these sort of wave motions, this is a wave pulling out. So if you want to shoot this type of image, you let the wave break and then you let it pull back, and you start your remote release to pull back and get the texture in the image. Again, low and close, that rock in the very foreground there, I can actually touch that. That's how close I am to it. Yes, I've got a lens cleaning cloth with me because the spray was catching that and then hitting the front of the filter. So you have to be very careful about that sort of thing. We've got the fading parts of a sunset going on here. Because we're on the east coast, it's really a sunrise coast. This is Vik in Iceland. Rule of thirds going on here. No, it's not Vik in Iceland. This is Snæfell's Peninsula in Iceland, and I can't pronounce the name of this church. But rule of thirds going on here, lower level, and then I've just drifted the sky to get some motion in. Nothing was happening in the sky. So putting the 10-stop ND in gives me that little bit of texture in the sky as the light was hitting the church. Again here, playing with sand. This is Bamborough Castle on the Northumbria coastline, playing with the sort of sea and sand on the beach here and the rock pools. I'm always trying to create an interesting leading line in from the left-hand side here as the water breaks over. It's much safer to play with outgoing tides. Sometimes it's not always possible. If you're going to play with incoming tides, just make sure you know where your sort of escape routes are so you don't get cut off. Grad on the sky here to bring the definition out. And that's what it looks like the following day. Again, when everybody had seen how great the week's worth of sunrises had been, we went out on the last day, and that was sunrise. It did come up somewhere in the world, but it didn't come up at Bamborough Beach that morning. So shift your white balance down to like 4,000 Kelvin, put your grad on the sky, 6-stop ND, make it go misty, and create that atmosphere. It's not the end of the world. The sun hasn't come up where we wanted and the sky's on fire. You can make something out of it. And again, that's why I've got these leading lines in the foreground, just in case you could see it wasn't really going to happen. And we'd been down here. This is like 4 o'clock in the morning. We wandered down here, freezing cold, pre-breakfast. And everybody's going, not going to get the shot I want, but we can make something of that. It's not always sort of doom and gloom when we can't get the pictures we want. And this is where actually sort of using that, say, the wide angle lens here exaggerates the leading lines, what I like doing with a 14mm lens. And that's what it looks like at another morning as the sun comes up. So go back to the same locations because they look completely different depending on how you go. So that's 3 days worth, 3 completely different pictures.
Yeah, I've seen hundreds of pictures of Bamber Castle, been there, tried to take hundreds of pictures, and it can look different every 5 minutes of the day. It's incredible.
Yeah. It is. We stay in Bamber High Street, so this is 10-minute walk for us. So that's why we will go down there at sunrise at silly o'clock in the morning and just try and shoot because you never know what you're going to get. And I tend to find here, this is before sunrise comes up, so this is the underlight on the clouds. I prefer that rather than the actual sunrise itself. Gates, leading lines. We talked about leading lines and composition here. Lead your viewer's eye across the frame. And this is a good thing about... We've got 2 things here. You can see the Rocky Peninsula right down on the far end there. That is the best shot, okay? That is the point you really want to get to. But on this particular instance, we've been photographing waterfalls during the day, and we got back there, and the sunset wasn't looking good, and then suddenly it got really good. It was one of those really annoying evenings. So it's, do we make a break for the peninsula right down at the end and maybe get the killer shot, or do we just stop here and create a scene for us? So I stayed here with half the group went down to the peninsula. They didn't make it in time, unfortunately. So the group up here, where we didn't walk all that way down, we managed to get a shot for it. So sometimes good enough for your composition will give you an image, whereas if you try to run all the way down to the peninsula and get the perfect shot, when you're chasing light like this, when it's going down rapidly, it sometimes... Have a look around where you are and what can you make. There's normally lots of things you can do with leading lines.
There's nothing worse in landscape photography than chasing the light.
I know.
I've done it so often, I kick myself every time. Like, I'm going to stay where I am. This is the composition I want. And then, but it looks really nice over there. And then you make the wrong decision and you kick yourself later. You know? And
the light changes as you move, and it was better where you were. And been there, done that, and I will still continue. Well, I try and tell myself not to do it, but I still do it from time to time.
Yeah, it's all part of the joy of landscape photography.
Yeah, it is. Ice caves. Has anybody had the opportunity to go to an ice cave? If not, please do so. They are fun. Have you been to ice caves at all? I
have, yeah. And if anybody wants to be really inspired about ice, we actually have a SmugMug film called Climbing Ice, featuring Tim Kempo, which was filmed on Iceland. We're in the ice caves. We're on icebergs. We're in the Moulins, those big tubes. So go check out Climbing Ice on this channel, on the SmugMug Films YouTube channel. You'll find Climbing Ice. It's a great way to see some amazing imagery from Iceland, and the film actually they're ice climbers inside the ice caves. It's phenomenal. It's really worth seeing.
Yeah, they're just out of this world. Again, if you haven't had a chance to go, you should go, because the textures and this, I could have spent all day here. There was so much to shoot, and the lines, the textures, the colours are just incredible. Really, can't emphasize enough. So, if you get a chance to go and shoot this, the thing to understand about here is manual focus. Probably these textures, while they look like this, you can see through a lot of this. So you're going to be. I was using focus peaking here. Because while the AF systems are really, really good, if you just want to fine tune it that bit more, I found sort of focus peaking was the way to go with manual focus on this. This is the Iron Islands for any of you that watch Game of Thrones. If you recognise this is called Ballantoy Harbour, again in Antrim, and it is a phenomenal place. I understand why they used it now. It's just incredible as a location. So Antrim here, and the colour contrast. I like the colour wheel theory where we've got conflicting colours and contrasting colours. All in a scene here. 10-stop ND to drift the sky and just give the sort of moodiness to the water in the foreground. Perfect reflections. Sometimes it's not all about the sky here. And it was just sort of, this is Snowdonia. And this is one of the very many sort of mountain lakes you can find that are just mirror flat. It's just symmetry, I think, is something really to pull into your photographs. Iceland again, color tone. This is sort of the sun had sort of come up into the cloud bank here, and then the sky had just gone on fire. It had gone on this bizarre color, and yeah, just sort of trying to have that texture in the rock. Once that sun clears that rock on the left-hand side there, I can't shoot anymore. I had to go round the other side of the rock and then shoot back into it and have the side light catching the rock here. But the color palette you play with in Iceland is just incredible. I think this one for me is where I really set out to sort of not shoot reality. The reality picture of this one, it was about -7, 45-mile-an-hour winds. This is just north of Newcastle, St Mary's Lighthouse on the east coast of the UK. And the waves were choppy and the clouds were not inviting at all. And I just looked at it and thought, well, these clouds are moving so fast. If I do a long exposure here, I'm going to create something just a bit different. And I think it's one of those first shots that really got me into like not recording reality and not shooting reality in my pictures. This is Snowdonia as well. This is actually a cafe. It is an amazing place to go and look at. It's either bright green in the summer, or if you go there in autumn time, you'll get this sort of beautiful red colors here. Almost takes on sort of fall colors that you often see in the US. The river I blurred out because it was trickling along. There wasn't a lot of water in it at all. So by doing the longer exposure here, this gives me my sort of texture in the foreground. And sometimes high shutter speeds sort of on a tripod here, 30th of a second, just to get that feeling of, and I still didn't manage to record it, was how violent this actually was. This is Iceland, and this normally looks, this is normal for this part of the rock stacks. But sometimes there's a place for really, really sort of not shooting everything with blurred water. We can use sort of 30th of a second. I've done some handheld stuff as well, but that just didn't convey the power of the water. Pick a single subject and build your picture around that. Don't overcomplicate your scene. So I've taken the iceberg here on the rule of thirds. This is an incoming tide. Sometimes you need incoming tides to shoot. You can see the water spraying off the back of the iceberg. Most of the time I'll do a pull back shot with outgoing tides. This is an incoming tide. And again, same location. And now we've got a storm coming in from the outside while the sun is setting on the right hand side of the frame. I am here in my wellies and I'm trying to rest the tripod on other stones so it doesn't sink down in the sand, because you've got to, that's a big problem if you're trying to do long exposures on sand and the tides keeps coming up to you. The other thing you've got to realize is ice floats. So if you don't pick a big enough iceberg, it's going to float away, so you'll get movement in it as well.
We actually we have a question. Roger actually's been really busy in the chat window, and he was asking about. I think if you go back to the gate image, it was a few shots back, and I apologise, folks, but there's actually a delay on the chat. It normally takes about 30 seconds for the conversation to go back and forward. I think it was this image when he posted the question. He was asking if you do much dodging and burning in your image.
I don't really do a lot of dodging and burning. What I will do is what I call base darkroom technique. So I'll play with the, open up the shadows, pull back the highlights. I will then pull up, sort of just tweak the saturation, tweak individual colors. I might put a software grad on it. Dodging and burning, I tend to do that more on my portraiture work, but I don't tend to do much of that on my landscapes. But I might have pulled a software grad down on this as well. I can't remember actually how I processed this one. Yeah, it's got a software grad on the sky. Yeah, it's pretty much about it. Yeah, just let the light work the way the light works in the scene. The more you work with light in your scene, the less sort of post-processing you have to do. It's a really great question, though.
Yeah.
Dodging burning is something you used to do all the time in a wet darkroom. Yeah, so we've got a snowstorm coming in here, and then we've got sunset. Yeah, sunset was just giving that lovely hint of colour onto the right-hand side of the picture, and then we had to clear out of there before we got, very heavily snowed on. That's the same beach, different day. Here we go. This is how you use your 200mm compression. So if we had shot this on my 14mm, it would be so wide, it would be pushed so far away from me, we wouldn't have any sort of definition here at all. This is pre-sunrise as well in the Yorkshire Dales. So it's one of the another national parks in the middle of the UK. Beautiful rolling hills, and this is early morning mist, about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And it's just burning off, and we're waiting. The sun is going to come up right up the middle of the frame there. And this I've actually got my grad pushed right down here. I could have used a reverse grad on this if I wanted to, but I have my medium grad pushed a lot further down. But this is where you'd shoot with your 200mm. You've got layers, and you want to pull them close together. This works in valleys and hills like this. It works on seascapes as well, where you've got sort of the cliff faces, you want to pull them together. It works in mountain valleys. So 200mm. That's why I've just replaced the 24-70 f4 in my bag with this new 24 to 200, because it means I can take 2 lenses out of my bag and just have this one lens in here, which is really, really good. So I'm going to shoot it mid-range around f8 most of the time. So it's going to be a great lens to have, this 24 to 200, f4 to 6.3.
Yeah, the 70 to 200 is my favourite focal length. It's great for photographing portraits and people, and I have to say probably a majority of my recent landscape work has been done at that kind of length, picking out the individual tree that's turned colour in the autumn and fall, just picking out details in rivers. It's just a great focal length. I love the 70 to 200. It's not always about being as wide as possible, and sometimes that can be to your detriment, you know.
It can be, yeah. You can get too much in, it can be pushed too far away from you. So yeah, using a long lens, I always have a long lens with me just in case I see any wildlife, or I get a chance to compress a perspective, or isolate part of a waterfall or something like that. It's always got a place having a 200mm with you. Again, I do a lot of walking, a lot of hiking, so I tend to go smaller, lighter. I love the 70 to 200 for portraits and things like that, but it's just a bit too heavy for me to carry around as a sort of landscape lens. So this is why this 24 to 200 is going to be really good. Anastapi in Iceland again. The texture here on the water, we've got, it wasn't really moving around, so going to 30 seconds gave me that drift in the clouds, because again, it was sort of just not doing a lot. What you've got to watch, be very, very careful of when you're doing long exposures of sunrise or sunset, is if the cloud breaks, you'll end up with a streak through the clouds of a blown highlight. So be very careful when you're doing long exposures of sunrise, sunset, if the sun is going to be visible at any time, because you're going to blow that part of the highlight, even using a grad. Been up here 4 or 5 times, still not got the perfect shot, because the clouds have never played fair. It's a great walk. We're parked down there at the bottom of Tryfan, which is the mountain on the left-hand side there. And you walk up here, which is an interesting walk. It's a good fun walk, and then you can play with the waterfall all the way up. There's multiple ones of these. And we get up here, and we expect the sky to go on fire, and it's not done it quite. This is the best one yet, but we're going to keep going back until we get it, because it lights up. Again, Snowdonia National Park, that water there, Llyn Ogwen, is where we've been doing some of those other shots, and the little lake you can see just in the middle of the picture, that little white part there is the other lake I showed with the perfect reflection shot on as well. So this valley here, the Ogwen Valley, is a photographer's, it's a dream to go and shoot. But yeah, another failed sunset. But again, by having the foreground in it, it works because I've got something else. I've got another level of interest in the picture. We can do astrophotography from the UK on the, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 days a year where the galactic core is above the horizon and we get a clear sky. It is possible to do astrophotography from the UK without, this is just a tripod and a lens. This is North Devon. So galactic core, this is what I call the NASA edit. Now I edit my Milky Way pictures to, in this particular instance, to show the galactic core. So this has had quite a bit of post-process work done on it. You could have edited it just to be sort of something like you'd see with your eye. But this is my NASA edit of the galactic core. And the Z70, you see we're shooting at ISO 5000, and there's next to no noise in it, and any noise that was in it, I could just remove in post-process. And that's one from Yorkshire. Galactic core's not quite visible. It's still below the horizon, but I hope to, in the next few weeks, now we can get back out, go and shoot that. I just toned the white balance down on this one a bit just to sort of give myself a bit more of a blue sky on this one for the effect on it. But yeah, it's sort of hopefully improve on that. I'm always looking at trying to improve my pictures, so I will go back. This one I was happy with until I'd shot the previous picture. Now I've seen the galactic core. I want the galactic core above this. And that gives me like two nights in a year to go and do that, assuming I've got clear skies.
If you're lucky.
If I'm lucky, yeah. So, yeah, this one's the next to-do list shot for me on the list.
Excellent.
Iceland Auroras, we've got 8 seconds here. If you're going to shoot auroras, you need sort of, don't go too long because you won't get the dance in the sky. If you're doing this at 30 seconds, 25 seconds, you're not going to get the dancing in the sky. You've got to think about the aurora about 8 to 10 seconds. If it really starts to move, you could think about bringing it down a bit and sort of going to a lower shutter speed, 4 seconds maybe. But it depends on the aurora storm.
So definitely with Aurora, use the ISO. I mean, you get such clean ISOs at such high ISO numbers that keep that shutter speed, quicker than you think, but push the ISO to do that. Especially if you're saying you can go 5000 super clean, then that's great.
Yeah, and this is where you go. I always start. So for the Aurora, I would always start about ISO 1600. I'd start about 10 seconds, and then I'd start bringing my shutter speed down, and then move my ISO up until I get the sort of nice point where I've got the movement in the sky, whereas it's not all just blurred flat. But yeah, you can take the noise out of it. This is gone are the days when we used to shoot film and it was like 400s noisy. Those days don't exist anymore, really.
So your picture-in-picture's hiding a lot of these, so I'll try and turn it on and off as we get to them.
This is the last one, actually, Alistair.
Okay.
And there we go.
Interesting colour in that.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal storm. Again, don't take too much notice of the forecast. If you've got a clear sky and you're in one of the aurora zones, this night, this particular night here, this is all one night. So we drove to this place. There was nothing there. We drove over the mountain, got here to Kirkjufell, which is sort of the famous place to shoot the aurora from. And then we were in the car park, and the sky came alive. I then took a group of people round here after we got bored of shooting it in the car park, hoping to get the classic shot. We got that. We drove back over the mountain to get that. And then we drove the other side of the mountain, and we got that. It was a proper night's aurora chasing, that one. All the delegates loved it. Now, I'm not promising that on all of our workshops, but we were out there for 3 weeks early part of this year. It was the last workshop we ran before we went into lockdown. So I'm looking forward to getting back out and photographing some landscape images. But yeah, we got very lucky for the 3 weeks worth of workshops. Every delegate got to shoot some really, really good aurora images. And this one was the final evening. And it was just the storm. This was not meant to be an aurora night. And the storm that exploded was just terrific. This is in front of our hotel. If I was really lazy, I could have put my tripod out, put the camera on it, and sat on my bed, opened the curtains, and triggered it from there. It was just, didn't have to go very far at all for this one. And you say, awesome. I've got my shutter speed down there. to give me 6 seconds. So as I said, Nikon School UK, check out Nikon School online if you want. We've got lots of courses on there. So they're on the website there. All sorts of things. If you want to know how to use your Nikon camera, shoot landscapes, wildlife. We do some live shoots as well. All sorts of different courses there. For the creative courses, all brands of camera are welcome. If you want to ask me, DM me any questions, Nikon Neil UK. When I remember to look at my DMs, I will try and get back to you if I can help you. So that's a sort of quick image. Hopefully that's been useful. There's some hints and tips there and some useful techniques.
Yeah, people have been enjoying it, absolutely. And during that, Roger was obviously listening, plus playing with all these menu settings on his D850, and he found the place to.
I was just going to go and grab mine.
No, he says found the split screen function. It's on the I button when I'm in live view.
It's on the I button live view. Yeah. I just remembered that.
He did know it. He didn't see this comment prior to saying that. So glad you found that, Roger. There was also a little bit of discussion about filters, which could be a whole show in itself. Soren Toma asked, can you ask Neil if he's worked with other label of filters and if he's used Polar Pro? I know you mentioned you've used Lee, you've used Nissi. Yep. I'm a big fan of Wine Country Camera and the Blackstone filters. Polar Pro, they've appeared on the market. I've certainly seen those on the kind of gimbals of drones and that type of stuff, but I know they have some interesting stuff coming out on cameras. You worked with any other brands yourself?
We get to see what delegates bring a lot. The ones that always interest me are the Wine Country ones in their holders.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. They look really, really good. You don't get fingerprints on them because I'm forever cleaning mine from fingerprints.
They're in they call them the vault. They call them the vault. So the lens is in a vault, a holder that then goes in. I love it. I've used it for a long time, but they're expensive. So you kind of get what you pay for with filters. You know, it all comes down to color cast, really, right? That's the main thing you're trying to avoid. Trying to get the filtration you want with no color shift, and you know, the price point normally dictates how good that is, unfortunately.
It will do. Yeah. We sort of, we do a lot of landscape courses and we provide a lot of advice on this, and it's impartial advice from us. What we say, two things: filters, they're an investment. I had my Lee filters for, I don't know, from the 90s through to the early 2000s. No, even longer than that. They're an investment. Same as a tripod. A good tripod, we see a lot of people on courses, they're on their third or fourth tripod. And by the time you get to your third or fourth tripod, that money you've spent, you could have bought one really, really good one. Certainly if you're serious about your landscape photography. So filters and tripods are really good investment. The Polar Pro, Alistair, so when we did the D780 launch in Iceland with the UK photography press, one of the journalists had the Polar Pro range there, and I was very, very impressed with it, up until he told me that they don't make medium grads and they don't make a 3-stop ND. So at the moment, I can't use them because my main shooting style is good, but they were very, very impressive.
Yeah, I think they'll probably move into that. Yeah, I think they'll move into that space. Obviously, they've started with the small filters for your drones and your gimbals and stuff, and now they've been making the screw-ins and that type of stuff. So I think we'll definitely see them moving in that direction. But ultimately, like we said, it is an investment. The more money you spend, likely the better the color rendering on any of those brands that we've spoke about. But it is an expensive thing, and it's something that you have to take care of and look after and make sure you take them. But as you've seen, they can make a world of difference to the image that's there. Got a question here from Cameron Weir, a good Scottish name. He mentioned earlier in the chat that he's joining us from Scotland today. Alistair, if you can shoot the Galactic in Scotland, where would be the best place to shoot it from, or does Neil know? Well, I do know the answer to that. It's actually in Dumfries and Galloway, down on the kind of southern border of Scotland. Dumfries actually has a designated dark sky park. The difficulty is getting the weather to do it just at the right time, and getting the right timing with the weather and the full moon, and it's a whole it's a whole juggle getting the right time of year. But if you're going to see it, the Galloway Forest in Dumfries and Galloway is the place to go. It is, as I say, designated national dark sky park, which means, like, if you live there, you have to use certain type of light bulbs, and the street fittings all have the street lights all have certain fittings, so that there's very little light pollution, and that's really the main thing. So head there.
Yeah, we're just actually, I'm just working on looking at, I've not been to Glencoe since I shot Fuji Velvia, so I'm just looking at going up there as a next sort of tour. Is that, how dark sky is it up there? Or is that too close to Aviemore up that way?
Oh no, Glencoe's pretty dark. It's just that typically is pretty cloudy, just because of the mountains, you know. So, and then the mountains cause a lot of shadowing, and you know, preventing you from seeing the core, the galactic core type thing. So Galloway is nice and open. So
try that.
Jerry Adams says, I thought the weather is always right in Scotland. It is. It's always. There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. That's the only difference.
I would say the last time I was in Glencoe, actually, we went up there, storm clothes, the works. We had a week-long, beautiful blue skies, not a cloud in sight. It was horrible landscape weather.
Yeah.
Really,
Everybody
horrible.
else was loving it, you know, because it was so beautiful. But yeah, you know, if you don't like the weather in Scotland, give it an hour. It will change. It's typically, and prepare yourself for 4 seasons in one day. But yeah, go check out Dumfries and Galloway if you're wanting some night sky stuff. Jerry posted a question earlier, or a comment earlier, said, interesting, I do mostly documentary and street photography, and I rarely go above 1600 ISO, but I think you've given them confidence that you can go a little bit more than that, right?
Yeah, it's all going to be camera dependent. The newer camera sensors, you can push further with the ISO. That's the one thing that changes year on year when we release new cameras and things like that. The ISO performance always just sort of gets incrementally better. I've just been playing with the D6, and that's just silly numbers you can get to now. There is no concept now of a high ISO on that camera. Similarly with the Z series cameras. We're happy. My colleague's got shots of wildlife shots on 40,000 ISO on his Z6, and yes, it's got some noise in it. Yes, you can take it away, but does it mean you can get a shot where sometimes you wouldn't have got that shot? Yes, it does. So yeah, find the limit that you're happy with, but yeah, be prepared to push it. It's the technology. Just embrace the technology as it's built into the cameras, because that enables us to shoot images that even sort of 4 or 5 years ago would have been too dark to shoot handheld. And again, if we've got the in-body stabilization, we can now, if we have to, shoot at some ridiculously low shutter speeds.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost you anything to try it.
No,
it's not costing you film.
No, or wait 2 weeks to get it back from the lab and turn it around and compare it against your notes. Yeah,
it's a few comments about people being comfortable at 5000 ISO and stuff on the D850, and so great comments. Listen, if you've enjoyed Neil's presentation today, give us a thumbs up on the channel. It really supports us here at SmugMug Live. It's great to see those thumbs up, and you know, helps us support the channel. You can also support the channel by hitting the subscribe button, hitting that little bell notification. That way you will be notified, as I said, whenever we release a new episode here. Let me talk about the episodes we've got coming up on Thursday this week, which is the 9th of July. We have one of our ambassadors, Renee Robin, joining us. She will be sort of looking at her composition work and sort of breaking down some of her images to show you how she creates these amazing images. So that's this week on Thursday. Next Tuesday, we have Dave Grover from Capture One joining us, and we're going to have a little look at Capture One software and what that can do for you. And then next Thursday, which is the 16th, I'm going to be joined by the amazing Matthew Jordan Smith, who is a celebrity and fashion photographer, photographed a lot of great names in his career. He's going to be joining us live from, I believe it's Tokyo, certainly Japan. So that will be a great episode next Thursday. A wonderful, wonderful photographer. But let me thank Neil. Thank you for your time. Your hour turned
Been
into
a
an hour and
pleasure.
a half, but that's fine. We have nothing else to be doing, so it's always fun to catch up with you. Thank you for sharing all those wonderful images and talking about the cameras and some of the settings and being open to letting people reach out to you if they have specific questions about any of that gear. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No problem at all. It's been a pleasure, everybody. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. Hope found that useful. As I said, if you want to contact us, feel free to do so.
Yeah, they will do. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Neil. And we will see you, as I say, next time here on the channel. But for now, thank you so much and take care wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. And we'll see you next time on SmugMug Live, brought to you by SmugMug and Flickr. Take care, everyone. Bye.